My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old, and until my son Noah was born, I thought I knew what exhaustion was. I thought I understood love, fear, joy, doubt. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the whirlwind that took over after I held that baby in my arms for the first time. During pregnancy, everyone around me only talked about the magical part. "You'll see. Being a mom is the best thing in the world," they'd say, eyes sparkling. My mom, my friends, coworkers, even strangers in line at the grocery store. I would smile and nod, desperately wanting to believe them. After all, I wanted this baby. He was planned. My husband Jonathan and I had been trying for almost 2 years. We went through treatments, suffered losses, cried silently. When the test finally came back positive, we cried again, but this time with relief. The pregnancy was relatively smooth. All the checkups were normal, and Noah was growing well. I decorated the nursery little by little, listened to lullabies, and planned the baby shower. I was sure I would be a great mom. I'd always been organized, loving, determined. I believed that loving deeply was enough to handle it all. But no one told me what comes after. No one said that even while loving my son with every part of me, I could still feel so broken. Noah was born on a rainy October morning in a hospital here in Portland. I was exhausted and in pain, but when I heard his cry, something inside me calmed. For just a few minutes. Because soon after, a strange emptiness took over, and I had no name for it. I was ashamed that I wasn't overflowing with happiness. I pretended everything was fine, smiled for the photos, posted on Instagram, but inside, I just wanted to disappear for a while. The days that followed were a blur of feedings, diapers, sleepless nights, and a kind of exhaustion so deep I couldn't even keep my eyes open. Jonathan did what he could, but he went back to work a few days after the birth. My mom came to help, but even with her there, I felt alone. And worse, I couldn't understand what was wrong with me. I started feeling like a fraud. Every mom I knew seemed enchanted with motherhood. But I was crying in the shower, hiding. I was scared of being alone with Noah. I was scared of myself. Sometimes I even thought he would be better off with a different mother. One who smiled, sincerely. One who didn't feel like a complete failure for not having it all together. There was one night I'll never forget when Noah was about 3 weeks old. He was crying nonstop. I had already nursed him, changed him, rocked him, sang lullabies. Nothing worked. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding him, and started crying too. It felt like my body was screaming, "You've failed. You're not enough." In that moment, I just wanted to disappear, not to hurt myself or him. That never crossed my mind. But to vanish, to stop being me, to be anyone else but that exhausted, shattered woman I didn't even recognize anymore. It was hard to admit. Weeks passed before I said anything. When Jonathan found me crying in the laundry room, clinging to a towel, he looked terrified. "Emily, what's going on?" he asked, confused. I tried to explain, but the words came out all jumbled. I could only say, "I'm not okay. I don't know who I am anymore." That was the first time he realized how serious this was. Until then, he too had believed in the myth of the supermom, the woman who handles it all, always smiling. But that woman doesn't exist, and if she does, she's not me. The next day, Jonathan took me to see Dr. Angela, the obstetrician who followed my pregnancy. I was trembling when I walked into her office. Saying everything out loud felt like confessing a crime. But Dr. Angela was warm. She listened. She didn't judge. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like someone truly saw me. she explained what postpartum depression was. Told me it was more common than I thought, that it wasn't weakness or lack of love or ingratitude. It was a real imbalance, chemical and emotional, and that there was help. I left that office with a plan, a thread of hope, and my first appointment with a therapist scheduled for the next week. The pain didn't go away overnight, but that day, for the first time since Noah was born, I didn't feel entirely alone in my silence. If this story is touching you in any way, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This simple gesture means a lot to our work and encourages us to keep sharing real, deep, and human stories. Stories that offer comfort, spark reflection, and remind us that no one is truly alone. Thank you so much for being here. Your presence matters. Always. The first therapy session was strange. I walked in with Noah and his carrier, wearing my best fake smile, pretending I was stronger than I felt. My therapist's name was Rachel Thompson. She looked kind, maybe in her late 40s, and she didn't rush me. For a few minutes, she just asked about Noah, how old he was, how he was sleeping, how feeding was going. But then, gently, she asked, "And how are you, Emily?" I opened my mouth to answer and burst into tears. No warning, no build-up. It just happened, like a dam breaking after being held for too long. I sobbed, ugly, heaving sobs. I apologized, over and over, but Rachel shook her head softly and said, "You don't have to apologize for feeling." That hour changed everything for me. I finally said things I had buried, that I sometimes regretted having a child, even though I loved him with all my heart, that I missed my old life, that I hated how I looked in the mirror now, that I felt like a stranger in my own body, that I didn't recognize my reflection, that some days the silence in the house felt like it was screaming at me, and on other days, the cries of my baby were so loud in my soul that I felt like I might break. Rachel helped me understand that I wasn't going crazy. What I was experiencing was valid, and I wasn't alone. She introduced me to a local support group for new mothers, a small gathering of women, all carrying their own invisible weights. I remember my first meeting like it was yesterday. There were 7 of us. Sarah, whose baby had reflux and cried nonstop. Jessica, who had twins and hadn't slept more than 2 hours in a row in 3 months. Leah, who had struggled with infertility for years and was now dealing with postpartum rage. Each story was different, but the thread was the same: pain hidden behind pacifiers and baby wipes. For the first time, I didn't feel like a failure. I felt like a mother, a real one, not the airbrushed version we see on magazine covers and parenting blogs. At home, things started to shift too. I began opening up to Jonathan more. He stopped asking, "What's wrong?" and started saying, "I'm here." That made all the difference. He learned to read the signs, the quiet stare, the way I clutched my coffee mug too tightly, the nights I stood too long by the crib. He never tried to fix it. He just sat beside me, sometimes in silence, sometimes with a joke, sometimes with a warm plate of food I didn't know I needed. But healing wasn't linear. There were good days, and days that knocked me back to the floor. One morning, Noah was about 6 weeks old, and I had planned to take him on our first solo walk to the park. I had packed the diaper bag the night before, picked out matching clothes, and even put on mascara, which felt like a victory. We didn't make it past the driveway. Noah started crying the moment I buckled him into the stroller. I tried to soothe him, but he kept screaming. A neighbor walked by, smiled, and said, "Someone's not happy today." A simple comment, but it shattered me. I felt judged, exposed, weak. I unbuckled Noah, took him inside, sat on the floor, and cried beside the stroller. That day, I messaged Rachel, and she reminded me, progress isn't perfect. She asked me to write down one thing I had done right that day. It took me a while, but I wrote. I got out of bed. I tried. From that day on, I started keeping a small journal, not of milestones, but of survival. I asked for help. I brushed my teeth before noon. I didn't cry during his diaper change. I laughed, for real, when he made a silly face. They weren't the kind of things that people post on social media. But to me, they were monumental. They were proof that I was still in here somewhere, that the fog hadn't consumed all of me. Still, the loneliness lingered. Friends had stopped visiting. Some didn't understand why I didn't respond to messages. Others thought I was being dramatic. One even said, "You should be grateful. At least you can have kids." That one hurt the most. I started to see how society treats mothers like machines, expected to give, without ever breaking. But I was breaking, and I was done pretending I wasn't. One night, as I held Noah against my chest and rocked him to sleep, I whispered to him, "I'm trying, baby, I really am." And for the first time, I believed it. I wish I could say that from that moment on, everything got better. That I found peace in my son's eyes and joy in every diaper change. But the truth is, healing came in waves, gentle and violent, sometimes carrying me forward, sometimes pulling me under. There were mornings when I woke up before Noah and just stared at the ceiling, scared to move, scared he would cry, scared he wouldn't. There were afternoons when I sat on the bathroom floor, holding a bottle in one hand and a pacifier in the other, wondering if I was cut out for this. But in between those heavy moments, there were tiny sparks of light. One of them was the day I walked to the park again. This time, making it all the way. Noah slept the whole time, bundled in his stroller, and I remember sitting on a bench, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching other parents laugh with their toddlers. I didn't feel like one of them, not yet, but I didn't feel invisible either. That was something. Jonathan began taking more time off work. Not because I asked, I didn't even know how to ask, but because he saw. He saw that I needed more than help. I needed a partner, a witness. He would take Noah for an hour in the evenings and tell me, "Don't do anything, just breathe." At first, I used the time to do laundry or clean the kitchen. But eventually, I learned to sit on the porch, close my eyes, and let the wind remind me I was still a person. Around that time, Rachel introduced the idea of naming my depression, not as a way to label myself, but to separate it from who I truly was. "Give it a name," she said, "so you can talk to it, fight it, not be it." At first, it felt silly. But I tried. I called it the fog. The fog would sneak in during the quiet moments, in the shower, during feedings, while folding tiny socks. It whispered lies like, "You're a terrible mother," or "Noah deserves someone better." But by naming it, I could start to push back. I began writing letters to it in my journal. "Dear Fog, today you came for me at 2 p.m. when I spilled milk all over the floor. You told me I was useless, but I cleaned it up. And I kept going. It sounds simple, maybe even childish, but it gave me power." The support group also became a lifeline. We started meeting at each other's houses once a week, sometimes with the babies, sometimes without. We laughed about stretch marks and spit-up stains. We cried about missed naps and identity loss. We told each other the truth, that we loved our children, but sometimes we missed ourselves more. Jessica once said, "I don't think I've ever felt more alive and more empty at the same time." We all nodded. It was during one of those meetings that I shared something I hadn't told anyone, not even Jonathan. I said, "Sometimes, when Noah smiles at me, I feel guilty because I don't smile back right away. It takes effort. And then I feel like I've failed him." Leah reached out and held my hand. "That's not failure, Emily. That's honesty. And that's love too." Those words stayed with me. By the time Noah turned 3 months old, things had shifted again. He was sleeping a little longer, smiling more often, discovering his tiny hands. I began to see him, really see him, not just as a responsibility, but as a person. A little soul who didn't need perfection, just presence. I still had bad days. I still felt swallowed sometimes by fatigue, insecurity, and silence. But I no longer felt like I was sinking alone. I had Rachel. I had the group. I had Jonathan. I had myself, the version that was slowly emerging from the storm. One day, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw the beginnings of a woman I could respect. Not because I had it all together, but because I was fighting. Quietly. Fiercely. That evening, I rocked Noah to sleep and whispered again, "I'm trying, baby. I really am." But this time I added, "And today, I think I did okay." I don't know when exactly I started feeling like a mother. Not just someone who had given birth, but someone who belonged in the title. Maybe it was the first time I laughed after a long cry, or when I sang him to sleep and didn't feel like I was pretending. Or maybe it was simply when I realized I could feel pain and love at the same time, and that both could exist without canceling each other out. Motherhood wasn't what I expected. It wasn't tidy or graceful or easy. It was raw and lonely and beautiful and brutal. And it was mine. Before becoming a mom, I used to picture motherhood like the scenes in movies. Soft lullabies, glowing smiles, the baby cooing as the mother rocks him in a sun-drenched nursery. But nothing in those scenes ever showed the sleepless nights that twist your insides, the quiet dread at dawn when you realize you've only slept for 40 minutes, or the desperate guilt that washes over you when you wish for just 1 hour alone. That fantasy, that myth, almost broke me. As I started healing, I realized how deeply that idealized image had been rooted in me. I'd been chasing something impossible, trying to fit myself into a role that wasn't designed for real, breathing women. I wasn't broken. The mold was. One morning, as I watched Noah try to roll over for the first time, I found myself smiling without forcing it. It wasn't a grand moment, just the sun coming through the window, the soft little grunts he made as he wiggled. But it felt real. I sat on the rug with him, laughed when he looked surprised at his own movement, and whispered, "We're figuring it out, aren't we?" That same afternoon, I opened up my social media account for the first time in weeks. I scrolled past flawless moms with matching outfits and clean kitchens, and babies smiling for the camera. For a second, the old wave of inadequacy crept in. But this time, instead of closing the app, I posted something. It was a photo of my living room, messy with a burp cloth on the couch and a half-eaten bowl of cereal on the coffee table. Noah was in the background, lying on his playmat, with one sock missing and drool on his chin. The caption read, "Today, I laughed with my son and cried into my coffee. I'm learning that both can exist, and that's okay." I didn't expect anything from it, but within an hour, the comments began pouring in. I needed to hear this today. Thank you for being honest. I thought I was the only one. I was stunned. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just healing. I was connecting, sharing. And somehow, by telling the truth, I was helping someone else feel a little less alone. Jonathan saw the post later that evening. He hugged me from behind in the kitchen and said, "That's the woman I married. The one with the courage to be real." His words stayed with me. That night, as Noah slept, I wrote a letter to myself, to the version of me who had sobbed in the laundry room weeks earlier. Dear Emily, you were never a bad mother. You were just a tired, overwhelmed, hurting one. And that's okay. You showed up. Even when it hurt. Even when you wanted to quit. That's what mothers do. Not the kind from magazines, but the kind who are made from sleepless nights and quiet bravery. I see you now, and I'm proud of you. Love, Emily. I folded the letter and tucked it inside my journal. Over the next few weeks, I began to reclaim pieces of myself. I started painting again. Something I hadn't done since before the pregnancy. I bought a small set of watercolors and painted while Noah napped, sometimes just for 15 minutes. The colors helped me breathe. I wasn't painting masterpieces, but I was painting me back into the picture. Rachel encouraged this. She reminded me that healing wasn't about returning to who I was, but discovering who I was now. I wasn't just Emily the mother. I was still Emily the woman, the artist, the wife, the friend. And slowly, I began to believe that. I also started speaking more openly in the support group. We talked about resentment, something many moms feel but rarely admit. Resentment toward partners, toward the baby, even toward ourselves. We talked about identity loss, intimacy struggles, body changes, mental fatigue. Nothing was off limits anymore. One evening, as we sat in Leah's living room with mugs of tea, Jessica looked around and said, "If we were all this honest from the start, maybe fewer of us would feel so broken." That hit me hard. We're not broken. We're just told we have to pretend we're not. The more I accepted my messy, complicated version of motherhood, the more joy I found in it. Not the surface-level joy of cute outfits or picture-perfect milestones, but the deep, quiet kind that grows in the soil of truth. Noah started laughing around that time, those full, belly-deep baby giggles. Every time he laughed, it chipped away at the darkness inside me. It didn't erase it, but it made room for something else. Hope. One night, while rocking him to sleep, I looked down and whispered, "You don't need a perfect mom. You just need me." And for the first time, I believe that was enough. It's been a year since Noah was born. 12 months. 365 days that changed me in ways I never imagined. Some days still feel like a blur, a series of moments held together by coffee, baby wipes, and the echo of lullabies. But others shine so brightly in my memory that I know I'll carry them forever. I no longer feel ashamed when I look back at those early months. I don't hide the parts of me that broke. I honor them, because it was in the breaking that I found my way back to myself. The fog hasn't completely vanished. There are days when exhaustion creeps back in, when doubt knocks quietly on the door. But now, I know how to answer. I know how to reach out. I have my tools, my support, and above all, I have the truth. I've stopped chasing perfection. I've stopped measuring my worth by how clean the kitchen is or how many ounces Noah drank. I've learned that being a good mother isn't about doing everything. It's about being there, even when I feel like I'm falling apart. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I overheard Jonathan on the phone with his sister. He didn't know I was listening. "She's incredible," he said. "I watched her walk through something most people don't talk about. She fought for herself, for our son. She didn't quit, even when it would have been easier to hide." His words brought tears to my eyes, but not the kind I used to cry. These were the kind that come when someone sees your whole story and still calls you strong. Since then, I've started writing, real writing. I began by blogging quietly, sharing little snippets of my journey, and to my surprise, women started reaching out. Some told me they saw themselves in my words. Others said they finally felt brave enough to speak their own truths. Never imagined that my pain would become someone else's lifeline. But now I see that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's a bridge. Last month, I was invited to speak at a local women's event on the theme The Truth About Motherhood. Standing in front of that small room, looking into the eyes of other women, some new moms, some grandmothers, some still waiting for their chance, I took a deep breath and told the truth. I told them how I loved my son and still cried in the dark. How I wanted to disappear but chose to stay. How I found healing not through pretending to be okay, but by finally saying I wasn't. And when I finished, the room was silent. Then, one by one, they began to clap. Not loudly. Not the kind of applause meant for a performance. It was soft, steady, the kind that says, "Me too." Noah is now walking. Wobbly, determined steps that make me laugh and gasp all at once. Every day, he teaches me that growth isn't about speed or smoothness. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. We still have hard nights. Teething, fevers, unexpected cries. But we also have mornings filled with sticky kisses and open-mouth baby hugs. We have dances in the kitchen to silly songs. We have quiet moments where I hold him and realize, I made it. We made it. And I don't say that lightly. There were days when I wasn't sure I would. To the mother out there who feels like she's failing, I see you. To the one who cries in silence, who hides her exhaustion, who scrolls past perfect images wondering if she's the only one struggling. You are not alone. Your love is not measured by your patience, or your energy, or your ability to smile when you're breaking inside. Your love is in every diaper you change through tears. Every time you ask for help, even when it's hard. Every time you stay, even when you don't feel like enough. Because maybe being enough isn't about having all the answers. Maybe it's just about being real, being present. Loving your child the best way you can in this moment. And if that's the case, then Mama, you're more than enough. Thank you for listening to my story. Maybe one day Noah will read this, and I hope he sees not just a mother who loved him from the start, but a woman who became a warrior in her own quiet way, for him, for herself, and for every mother still trying to find her light through the fog.